Hey, it's Johnny Q, and we got the drone out here because I wanted to show you the Brazos River when it's in its low stage. Because just a few months ago, it was way up there. And I've got a video I'm about to talk about some of the differences in what's happened lately as far as building, buying, and selling in Valley Lodge and Simonton. In the meantime, let's take a look at Valley Lodge from the air. Are you ready? Hey, okay, we're back in the office now. Where I was standing, if this were August 30th last year, the morning of August 30th, I would have been 40 foot underwater. That's how bad that river can get when Mother Nature rears her ugly head. In fact, I'm going to try to put in a clip right now. If this works, you should be seeing a clip of me on the morning of August 30th from the front of my kayak 40 foot higher up in Valley Lodge in the subdivision. So that's how bad it can get, and that's sort of what this video is about. We had some questions. We've had a lot of questions this year about Valley Lodge, Simonton, well, everybody in the Houston area really, but this is really about Valley Lodge and a little bit about Fort Bend County and the areas outside the city limits, because not all of Valley Lodge is in the city limits. Most of it is. I visited the county yesterday just to make sure. I had some things I wanted to ask them, and I put together a list of questions that I wanted to go to the county with, and I also wanted to go to the city with, and try to answer any question that anyone had about building, selling, buying, changes, everything that we could, most of everything that we could think of when it comes to the new issues that have risen since the last two floods we've had. And anyone's watching this and they're talking about Simonton or moving here, understand also, we've been here for almost 60 years, about 57 years, something like that. And we've had 4 pretty good floods in almost 60 years. So it's not like we flood all the time, but when it does happen, it's a pretty devastating thing. So Simonton's going to try to help everybody out in the future by making it harder on us now by making sure our houses are done a little bit higher above the base flood elevations. Now, a few years ago, FEMA raised the base flood elevation throughout most of the Gulf Coast. They'd been working on it for quite a while, and they raised the base flood elevation here by about an average of about 2 foot. But it went throughout not just the county, it went through all the Gulf Coast, it went on to Louisiana and Florida and everything else. And by raising the base flood elevation, they spread out the areas that were the flood zones, bringing more money into the pot for the feds to help pay for flood insurance. So that's where we are now. So I put together well, if you look at the web post, let me pull up something here. All right, here we go. Where you see this on my blog, okay, my video will be up here, and if you look below the video, I've attached most of the files that I'm going to be talking about here in the next few minutes for you to download and see for yourself. I've got Chapter 8 of the Simonton, Texas Code of Ordinances in a PDF, and then that's most of everything in Simonton. And that's just click right here, you can download that. And I took this straight from the website, from Simonton's website, so this isn't any big deal. I just sort of put it all together right here in one spot. So you've got the Simonton, Texas Building and Building Regulations. But right below that is an important document, because that is the amendment that was added last year. That is the building regulation amendment that raised some of the building standards to get a little bit higher above the base flood elevation. So you got to put those two together, this one and that one. You got to put together to come up with the building codes here in Simonton. And that doesn't include, if you're outside of Simonton, on the other side of the city limits line and you're into the county, then you're by county rule, not city rule. And that changes things a little bit. And we'll go into that in just a minute. Right below that, you have the Homeowner Flood Insurance Affordability Act overview. This is from the passed in 2014, I think was when it went in law. They were working on it in 2013. They had some changes, and they signed it in law in 2014. This is a good thing to look at. This talks about our ability to grandfather our flood insurance. Also talks about why it's so important to not let if you have a grandfathered insurance, if you got decent rates, you definitely don't want to let that lapse, not at all. And you can transfer that by law at closing to your new owners if you were to sell, or if you're buying a property that already has flood insurance on it, you can change that up. I mean, you can transfer it. Yeah, the federal government tells you can. And then there's a nice little PDF handout that the feds put together for all insurance agent. Not insurance agent, for all real estate professionals to make sure they read, so they'll know the things they should be asking and informing their potential clients. Right here is the detailed digital map of Fort Bend County. Now this is a great map, and I'm going to go into it. That is right here. I'm going to go into that in a minute. It is a fantastic map. I've been using it for years. If you don't know about it, go here, click on it, bookmark it. It's fantastic. You've got school zones, key map grids, city limits, the ETJs, fire districts, the FEMA flood map boundaries, city limits, all kinds of things. You can find out property owners, just about anything you want. And it's all available. That's through Fort Bend County. I've got a link on the website so you can click on it. And it's just, you can zoom right down to it. When you get over there, you can click on layers right here, and you can choose the different layers. They've got dozens of different layers that stack on top of each other depending on what you want to see. Right here, I've got the floodplain is on here on top of the city limits, and if I turn off, say, the floodplain, it disappears, and I just see the city limits here. It's a great map, and you can go there and you play with it all you want. You can see a whole lot about what's going on in Fort Bend County. Harris County has one too. We use Fort Bend County out here more, of course. Below that, I've got some actual maps, the federal maps, the FEMA federal firm maps. Now I've got two here simply because we were asking about the changes. What had changed in 1997, or the old map? What did FEMA change that was made things a little bit different in the new map in 2014? And these are sort of hard to find. You can get them from the government. I've got these two maps, which are Simonton. These are the 1997 maps. These maps were good until April of 2014, and that's when the new maps became official. And if you look at these maps, if you download them, and maybe I've got some clips on them, and I'll try to show them here in this, I'll try to blend them in here to this video so you can see some of these things. But people were talking about how the floodway, which is a little bit different than just the flood zone, had encroached into Valley Lodge more in 2014 and didn't even know what was happening. And they didn't do a good job putting out the word of what they were doing. FEMA didn't. And it did. If you look at this, I'm going to show you this right here. This is the city limits of Simonton, this area right here. If you can see it, this is a little bit darker green. All this red right here, there's stripes if you go to it, that's the floodway. Now everything is in the flood zone over in this part of the area. Everything is AE flood zone. But floodway is a subcategory of the flood zone of AE. So you may be in AE here, but over here you're also in the floodway. And that's going to change things a little bit. I'm going to talk about that just a little bit because that's going to be a big difference whether you're in the city limits or not too. And if you're in the county, it's a difference, but it's not quite as bad as if you are in the city limits of Simonton. So when you look at this, in 2017, this line right here, before 2014, I'm sorry, this line used to come up a little bit further like that. Then it came back down a little bit closer. Up here it did the same thing. And as the river moves and they raise the BFE, that floodway, it's defined as an area where they talking about the water moving more and more destructive cause. Logs moving, the water moving, and everything else like that. So they consider it a much more dangerous area. But it changes your flood rates. It can change your building permits. It can change a few things on how you handle a few different things when it comes to your property. So if this did encroach more into Valley Lodge, it used to barely touch anything in Valley Lodge. But after 2014, it got probably, I don't know, a dozen different home sites or different properties that didn't used to be in the floodway. Everything above Buckskin and out this way, and most of that was already in the floodway. I think a lot of people didn't realize they were in the floodway, but they were. They were just, it was still the AE, but they were in the floodway. The good thing is they're not in the city limits of Simonton up there. So you're in the county, and that changes things and make things a lot easier on you. And I'll get into that in just a second. But I wanted to show you that, and you can click on the digital map right here, and that will show you, and that'll pull up the screen we were just on. And if you want to see the old maps, you'll click into the tips right here, these two 1997s, and download those, and you'll be able to see those. And then these below it you probably don't ever need, but if you want them, these are the full-size FEMA maps for now, the 2014 maps. The digital map should be all you need, but if for any reason you want the official maps from the government, those are those 4 files right there, and that's the way that is. So those are all on the website. Those are all on the on this blog post right below the video. So you can go there and download any of that you want to. And I'll tell you what I did today, or yesterday and today. I went to the county, and I've got a list of questions I put together. So I'm just going to sort of read the questions, and I'll tell you what I learned. Nothing exciting, but you can always call if you have a legal question. I put Chris Ramey's phone number on here also. He's an attorney. He's a local attorney that handles a few things, but he knows a lot about the FEMA and the building permit issues. And he's at 713-974-1333, and he's on the website too. You can pull that up and see his phone number there. If I sat down with a couple of different officials, and I just went through the list of questions and got their best answers on this, and I'll go over them with you. First question, in regards to building permits or any permissions to build in the flood zone or the floodway, have there been any changes in the law or permit process since the last 2 floods? Basically, what's different from the things that I already knew about, and a lot of people already knew about previously. So let's get into the county first. Basic answer is nothing. They really haven't changed anything as far as the county is concerned. Now the county looks at these this way. If you are in the flood zone, if you're not in the city limits, if you're in the city limits, the county rules don't matter. They don't supersede. If it's not whichever one's more stringent, they bow out if you're in the city limits. So if you're in that little area of Simonton, or and you're outside the city limit lines, you're under county rule. And the county rule says if you are in the flood zone or the floodway and you build, you need to be 18 inches above the BFE. Most of the BFE over there is at 114 foot. You have to have an engineer check all this out for you. But it has to be 18 inches above the BFE. And it doesn't matter if you're in the flood zone or the floodway. The only difference would be if you're in the floodway, you have to mitigate your building. In other words, the area between, I had a diagram here somewhere, the area between the ground and 114 foot, or whatever the BFE is where you're building, that area right there, they think that this is in the floodway, needs to be, if you're going to add to it, you've got to take it away somewhere else by digging a dry pond or whatever. Now that's not that difficult to do if you have a larger piece of property, and they address that a little bit. If you're in the county and you have a property that's larger than 1 acre, you can mound up. You don't have to do it on pier and beam or stilts to build your home. That is only in the city. If you are on a larger parcel than 1 acre, new construction, whatever, you can build up with a mound. You dig out, whatever you dig out, you put on your mound, and you mitigate your flood damage that way, or everyone else's flood damage. That way you're adding the ground to it, but you're taking away from somewhere else, and that's what they want you to do. You have to have an engineer sign off on all of it, how many cubic foot you added, how many cubic foot you took away from the ground. Now, you can't fill that up with water because that defeats the purpose. If you are on 1 acre or less, you cannot mount. You have to pier and beam, and you have to build it structurally that way. But you can do new construction. There's been some talk that they won't let you do new construction. That's not true. It's not true in the city either. But it's more difficult. You got to follow a few more rules wherever you are. But you can build new construction. You can sell your property. You can do anything like that. You're limited a little bit on how you can do it. But yeah, you can absolutely build new construction in the floodway. A flood zone, I mean, in the city it's changed a little bit. It used to be in the old law and on the building permit regulations that's on the website, if you download them, you used to have to be 12 inches above BFE, but they changed that to 24 inches above BFE, and that's their biggest change. Now that's got all the AO, AE, any of the flood areas, including the floodway. You still have to be 24 inches above. The difference in the floodway is, if you will read the next one, which is the updated one. No, it's in the first one, the last paragraph in the first one. I'm going to read this paragraph to you. And this they pulled out, and this is mostly still in effect the way I understand it. And I think this can be construed as not being able to build in there, but that's not what they're saying. It says encroachments are prohibited. Now we're talking about the floodway, and we're back into the city limits of Simonton. Encroachments are prohibited, including fill, new construction, substantial improvements, or other development within the adopted regulatory floodway, unless it has been demonstrated through hydraulic analysis performed in accordance with standard engineering practice that the proposed encroachment would not result in any increase in flood levels. So let's back up a little bit. If you look at the new rules and regs for Simonton, you cannot mound up. You can't bring dirt in like we used to in order to build your home. I think everybody knows that, and that includes whether you're in the flood zone or the floodway. Everything has to be on pier and beam in the city of Simonton now if you're in the flood zone. If you are in the floodway, you can still build by pier and beam, but you will need to show that you're not, you still have to sort of follow the feds on that, and that's sort of the way what they're referring to the federal law 6512 and that. So it sounds to me that you can still do it. You can talk to Chris or talk to an attorney or talk to the city about it, but when I'm reading this, it certainly sounds you can still build, but you have to make sure and get an engineering report that says you're not disturbing the floodway, and which is what that's going to mean most likely is you'll be able to build on pier and beam, but you will still have to mitigate. You'll have to bring dirt out or trees or other structure out in order to balance out the load on the floodway. I talked to the city and they said that doesn't matter how large your property is. Unlike the county that said if you're larger than 1 acre, you can mound. If you're an acre or smaller, you had to pier and beam. The city says it doesn't matter. They don't care if you're on 1 acre, half acre, or 30 acres. You have to do pier and beam if you're inside the city limits. And that's including in the floodway or the flood zone. So that sort of answers that question. Another question. FEMA's made a few preliminary maps for possible changes in the firm maps. Neither the county nor the city are familiar at all with any updates. They've both heard a little bit about rumblings about that FEMA may be looking to update a little things. I don't know when they'll be updating it. It took them 25 years to update the first map, or the 1997 map to the 2014 map, or 20 years, whatever it is. But you've got new maps that I put down here too, and if you look on the website down, did I not put them on here? No, but I will. I'll add them on here. I've got some preliminary maps of Simonton and Weston Lakes. Unfortunately, it's not all of Simonton. It's the southwest area of Simonton and the southern edge of Simonton, including part of Valley Lodge. So they're not complete, and then a lot of Weston Lakes. And these are preliminary maps that I was able to get from the government websites where they're working on possible changes. I don't know how long it'll take to put any of this into effect, and you can obviously look at it until there's a whole lot of work to go. So that answers that question, sort of. And if someone wants to build a new home, what are the general guidelines he or she should be expecting? And I think we just sort of went over all that. If you are, you have to apply for a building permit in the city, and if you are in the county, if you're in the flood zone or floodway in the county, you have to do the same. Other than floodplain or floodway disclosures or the Texas required seller's disclosures, are there any other important points a person selling their home or land should be disclosing to their buyers, such as build, repair options, and such as that? The basic rule we taught to everybody, nothing's really changed. You also always have to have full disclosure. You got to tell your buyers everything you need to know, everything they need to know that you know. That includes where they are, if they're in the floodplain, they're in the floodway, what the story is with Simonton on rebuilding or raising your home. And we've all talked about the substantial damage from Jones and Carter, determining how bad your homes are. So you got to make sure you tell your buyers that if you're selling your home. Nothing changes as far as that. They've got the same rules that you did. The buyout. Nobody can tell me any updates on the buyout. I would say Chris Ramey probably knows more about the buyout than anybody. Ask him, ask Mallory. She probably knows as much about the buyout too as he does. So ask them about the buyouts. Nobody at the county, nobody at the city level could tell me too much other than the fact that they're still working on it. And that was about it. I had a couple of other questions about people thinking it was impossible to build in the floodway. None of that's true. You can build in the floodway. You can bring in new materials. It just sort of changes whether you're in the city or you're in the county. The county specifically told me, absolutely, you can build new all you want to. We don't want to tell people what they can do with their property. We just want to make sure it's a little bit safer for the floods. That's all you have to worry about as far as the county is concerned. City's a little bit more strict, but basically the same thing. You can build new. You just have to do by the rules. Now those are the biggest things. I think that's it. I'm going to take you back down to the river now, unless I think of something else I want to say, and I'll bring it back in. But if you have any questions, call me, 832-361-8055. I'm not an attorney. If you need an attorney, call Chris at the phone number I gave you earlier. I'll give you that again. It's 713-974-1333. And nice talking to you. Talk to you later. Thanks. Bye. Hey, all right, we're back again. Anyway, we're going to fly through that bridge.